Greetings, friends. It's Chapo. We're back again. It's me, Matt, and Felix coming to you on the day before New York City's mayoral primary. Who you guys got? What are you thinking? Right now, it looks like Eric Adams is the favorite. My general consensus on how to vote tomorrow is rank whoever you want to vote for, however you want, but just don't vote for Adams or Andrew Yang.
If you rank the same candidate 5 times, it counts as 5 votes. If you really want Eric Adams to win, I think Eric Adams has what it takes to win. I think so. You think about like what the job of New York City mayor is, and it's that everyone hates you and constantly disrespects you, and you're also the weirdest person in the city. Eric Adams has that because, like, I consider his frontrunner moment was when the news came to his son's house and told him how disgusting it was. And he was like, I'm gross. This is my house. My house smells bad.
And then ran an audit on what was in his refrigerator, because Eric Adams, of course, is a vegan, and they found all kinds of smoked salmons in the refrigerator of what was clearly his son's house. I mean, the guy lives in New Jersey, but yeah, you're right. He's already doing the job of being New York City mayor, which is just to have. Basically, to just
get clout on.
Yeah. You just like you sit in an office with your legs open, and people queue up to just kick you in the nuts over and over again.
They should replace the mayor's office. They should replace the desk there with a dunk tank. And if you're a citizen of New York, you should be able to sign up to get in line to dunk the mayor into the tank. And if you want to skip the line, because obviously it's going to be very long, you can pay, and that money can go into the city budget. And that would make the mayor of New York, even if he did nothing else the rest of the time, more useful than any of them have ever been. Because they would at least be raising fucking revenue.
The last mayor who like people liked for any period of time was Giuliani, and that's like you can't cheat death because
he presided over the apocalypse.
Right. But now, yeah,
because he was fucking master blaster in Bartertown for a year and a half.
Who run Bartertown? Master Blaster runs Bartertown.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's like you can't cheat death, and it's like if you owe like a debt. And now I would consider Giuliani the most disrespected man in America. Like,
oh yeah, the FBI showed up at his house, and they were just like tooling around through his shit like he's Richard Jewell.
He went from like being beloved by everyone to still carrying the curse of the New York mayors, like going around like butt dialing reporters. Like his teeth falling out, just something gross and confusing, like David Ross said, happening every 2 weeks. But Eric Adams is perfect for that because, like, there's so much weird shit about him. Like the thing of him referring to himself in third person because he keeps a diary. This is
a lot of where he writes about himself like he's the protagonist of a fucking novel.
Yeah,
Eric Adams was treated very rudely by the New York Post today when they claimed that my bed was sloppy and unmade. I keep tight corners on it every morning.
Like think about that when I'm there. That. Like you're calling your adult son on the phone and you're like, "Hey, like a bunch of guys that hate me are going to come to your house and call it gross
and look at everything.
I'm going to say it's mine. And you have to let me
through your shit.
You have to let me do that. Okay, yeah,
they're going to be combing through your shit like Michael Tracy at fucking Kurt Eichenwald's garage sale. Remember that?
Yeah.
It's exactly like that. That'll be fun for you.
Yeah, it's like
people were like clowning on the shoes he had.
Yeah.
They were like, "What are those?"
he had like Air Force Ones, but for like teams that are no longer part of the NBA. It was awesome. And also like there's so much about him that's perfect for this, like his personality, like how he started the race and he's like, I will not be playing. I'm against the race card. Like to very antiquated term to say in 2021. But then like the moment that like people are exploiting ranked choice, like Garcia and Yang, he's like, oh, so you want to keep a black guy out of office?
He literally
it's like, they're running
today,
against you.
He literally said today that Garcia and Yang forming a pact to like be like Garcia be like the number 2 choice of Yang voters to form a sort of coalition against Adams is sort of like leading in the polls. He said that harkened back to the days of the poll tax and literacy tests.
And Jim Crow, yeah, he's awesome. He's right. Like he should just make him mayor. After he said that, you should make him mayor. Like I've seen
Felix, Did you also know that Adams used to be pretty close to Louis Farrakhan, or they were allied at one point?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like- it's
honestly,
like-
I'm making the case that you should vote for him right now. But
No, I mean, I would like already there pretty much, but like that's
He comes from a robust tradition of like black conservative like nationalism.
yeah,
He's sort of like a kind of Clarence Thomasy in that respect. I think there's also something perfect about him becoming mayor in this moment, because after the explosion of the Black Lives Matter summer last year and all of this ferment and the twilight of the debungler era, this like big bird scarecrow motherfucker reenacting John Lindsay's presidency to a T, and then we get this huge field of candidates, no clear favorite. They have ranked choice voting for the first time to like make it more quote unquote democratic, and the likely outcome is that this fucking former cop who lives in New Jersey and has the politics of like the average Mike and the Mad Dog caller is going to get elected by the same coalition of voters who made Joe Biden the Democratic nominee.
Well,
Older non-whites in the outer boroughs are going to, just like in South Carolina, are going to, they don't care about any of the bullshit everybody is talking about, all the issues, all of these like supposedly heightened political stakes. They're going to fucking vote for the machine Paul the way that they did for Biden in 2020, because all of this ferment of politics that we invest ourselves in, it doesn't permeate beyond this layer of the people who are most online but least likely to vote in a mayoral fucking primary.
or maybe are likely to vote but are not numerically significant.
They're just not they're not the center of gravity of the electorate in the city.
Well-
any more than they were in the country.
I watched a very interesting movie last week. Maybe you guys heard of it. It's called Buck Breaking. And it was,
I want to watch it very much.
there are some different choices I would have made if I directed it, and I'm trying to. I've made an award-nominated documentary
That's true. You have.
Yeah,
I would
it's,
love your take on buck breaking
because,
honestly.
like, I'm not going to comment on whether I agree with the thesis or not. Don't feel like that's constructive, but it's like
stay in your lane.
if it was my job to make that argument, I would have done it. Like, let's be honest, Judge Joe Brown has a big role as, like, an expert in it, and a lot of what he says just makes... There's this part where he's like, yeah, if you look at the most popular genre of music, it's rap and hip-hop, but it hasn't changed for 30 years. And then you go to places... This is verbatim, by the way. I wrote it down because it was so insane. Then if you go to places like Japan, Paris, or Liverpool, people are doing it. But then a Japanese guy will be listening to it and he'll try to dance, and he doesn't know how to dance. He just jumps up and down. But the reason is all those countries are LGBT. It just like, even if you like believe the central thesis of buck breaking, that doesn't even make sense as a sentence. I had to.
Well,
it's so demented, but like I like buck breaking, and like some part, it's like
Yes, you heard it here first. Felix likes to break bucks.
He loves
he
buck
says it. He
break.
loves it. He loves buck breaking.
it is like it's okay. There are a lot of like black conservatives in America, and their voice like genuinely isn't heard a lot. And I don't mean black conservatives
absolutely.
like a black guy who happens to agree with Donald Trump. I mean like a very unique thing, black conservatism. And I consider buck breaking like a continuation of this tradition that, you know, Farrakhan is a part of. And even though it's not exactly the same thing, there are many strains of it. And I am very interested in that line of thinking. And there's something we're going to talk about later in the show that's like, it's a white guy doing the buck breaking thesis, but doing a shittier job and is less interesting or charismatic than Tariq Nasheed. And it's like, I don't know if I like really want to like would want that like represented like electorally. I mean, I don't really have a say in it, but like I do think it should be in the New York Times. Like more people believe that than believe whatever the fuck Brett Stevens does. And it's like genuinely a very interesting, like uniquely American line of thinking. And I do kind of think people should watch it. Like I don't agree with the central thesis, obviously, but it's like it is like I've met a lot of like normal people who are like good people and like they're nice people in their lives, and I wouldn't really call them like personally bigoted, but like do believe like a lot of the shit that I saw in that movie. And it's like if you pay attention to American media, there's just no representation of that in there. And so when, you know, in an electoral situation like this, people I feel like are constantly taken by surprise. And it's like, No, there are millions of Americans who like even if they're not exactly there, they're not exactly where buckbreaking is, or they're not exactly where, if you want to go further to the right, they're not exactly where Farrakhan is, or if you want to go further towards the center, like they're not exactly there, but they're like broadly in this sort of like the uniquely black idea of conservatism.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Felix Biederman endorses buckbreaking for New York City mayor.
Yeah.
Buck-breaking, porn star and amateur politics.
Well, it's like, you know why that movie's great? Is because when you consume something that isn't like conservative ink, that's not like mainstream conservatism, like sort of a more outsider-y conservatism, they'll do that thing where it's like, they say one thing where you're like, oh, that's completely true and no one really covers it. And then it'll be like, the next thing is like, and Japanese guys just jump up and down when they dance.
And Japan is an LGBTQ nation.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that means. I mean,
and also, I'd like to go back to Judge Joe Brown's original statement that hip hop and rap music hasn't changed much in 30 years.
It's changed a lot. I mean, like
that doesn't hold water.
Judge Brown is like, I think he's just like old.
Well, yeah, I mean, they used to be talking about having a house party or what to do when a fine female steps into a wedding and you've been eating too much, and now it's just you're sort of mumbling about taking painkillers.
I got obsessed with Judge Brown because I think he's like in a Biden type thing where he's like sundowning, and I watched Kwame Brown. Have you seen his podcast?
Oh my god, the shit where he was going in on fucking what's his name on Gilbert Arenas and Matt Barnes.
Yeah.
That was like dude. He cut a promo on those guys, the hardest I've ever seen.
No, that guy goes awesome.
He said, he's like, you guys keep having jokes about me in basketball. Then he goes, Matt Barnes, I got a joke about your motherfucking life, you.
Oh, he's awesome. Like, I hope he has his media career continues. He's very good at that. But Judge Joe Brown was on a recent episode, and like Kwame Brown starts it off, and he's talking about that. He's like, you may have heard there was like a sort of controversy with me and Charlemagne. A lot of people are mad at me, and Judge Joe Brown's like, all right, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to keep this brief, and then talks for 30 minutes. And the thing he starts off with is, during the 60s, during the anti-war movement, what people thought was if you raised a boy like a girl, war would stop. It's like this whole insane 30-minute thing, like rambling, like Biden-esque thing about like the 60s and like gender politics. But I do think, I don't know, we need more of that in mainstream media. Because it is like, when I looked at the comments, and a lot of people watch this, the comments were like, I'm a 62-year-old nurse. I agree with everything Judge Brown said. Like there's fucking stuff there's stuff that you've never heard of if you've like lived a certain life, and there are millions of adherents to it in America, and you'd never know if you only watch mainstream media.
Well, we've gotten pretty far afield from the New York City mayor's race. Yeah. But, I mean, I just back to if you're voting tomorrow, I'd just say anyone other than Yang and Adams, I mean, they're all goofies. They all stink. Maya Wiley seems to be the progressive choice, but she seems like an absolute sap to me. I mean, she's like spent most of the primary shitting on Bernie Sanders. But, if you want to rank her number one, go ahead. It just seems like all the real estate money and like police shit is behind Andrew Yang and Eric Adams. But just another just little development in New York City local politics. Sorry to bore most of the country, but this is the number one podcast about the number one city in America, New York. So I'd like to just continue for a little bit. The city council candidate who got revenge porn at an S&M dungeon in a state of sort of erotic bondage and ecstasy. That was leaked to the New York Post by his own campaign. His name is Zach Wiener. You folks heard of this?
I saw that. I mean, I'm having trouble with this one. I mean, if I wanted to be a conspiracy theorist, I would say that this guy who has a total long shot candidacy, like, why would they release if this guy's like had no real chance of winning? Like, why did this come out? I don't know. I
thought his response to it.
Come on. I mean, I don't know that, but my guess, if I had to guess, I would say that he fucking put it out there himself.
Yeah. I thought his response to it showed a lot of class and dignity and just being like, so I did a thing, and, I don't feel guilty about it or bad. He
shouldn't. He shouldn't.
Yeah,
nor should he.
Exactly.
Nor should he.
I don't feel guilty about it or bad. It's almost like I wouldn't mind if it got out there, and then my campaign got more attention because of that.
Or I'm sort of wondering if someone with a humiliation fetish wouldn't run for city council as part of a strategy for a grand denouement in which he is shamed on a national level in a way that really, really fires his gears, turns his crank.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, takes all kinds. New York politics is cool. Everyone should get to be mayor. Everyone should get to be a councilman at some point in their lives.
Well, actually, speaking of crank, this is the perfect segue into an old friend of ours, an old friend of the show. I'm talking about really. I'm actually recording this show now on the original Blue Yeti mic I got to when we started being like, oh, hey, audio should sound good on a podcast. And it still has the baseball crank sticker on the base of it. So the baseball crank is honestly like a foundational figure to the Chapo mythos. And honestly, like I feel guilty because we haven't talked about crank in a long time.
It's been a while.
Motherfuckers act like they forgot about Crank. But he came back this week with a pseudo-controversy that I loved because it involved, I would say, probably the only funny thing that Baseball Crank has ever tweeted.
I mean, honestly, give the guy credit for finding that squirrel finding a nut eventually after years of posting.
Yeah, he's done unintentionally funny things before. I think he did one of the funniest things I've ever seen, which was his blog post on September 12th, 2001, Why Baseball Still Matters.
So this was okay. I mean, you guys. I'm sure you guys saw the news that the Biden's dog Champ is no more.
He was
and
compromised
obviously
to a permanent end.
Whether it was behavioral issues or not, I don't know. I mean, but dog killing is back in a big way. It's the hottest thing. I mean, we are trendsetters here. We shone a light onto the huge American subculture of people who adopt dogs to kill them. And has it spread to the White House? I don't know. But
was there a woman in the room with Champ in in some sort of dark ceremonial robe with a jade inlaid dagger who was doing some sort of eldritch chant before she split him open? I mean, we don't know for sure.
There's no way of finding out. We don't know.
Well, Champ has gone to live in that big old country farm in the sky. And like people are a lot of prayers up for the Biden family. But curiously, no word on Major. Where's Major? Every time I go to the debate stage, I'm going to say, "Where's Major? Where's Major Biden?
Where's Major at?"
Champ is no more, but Major is still around somewhere. We don't know.
I think this is probably how the Trump people felt. When the Bannon faction was pushed out and the Javanka faction started winning and he just started governing like Marco Rubio as if he would have done anything else. I feel like I was part of a contingent of patriotic Americans who loved huge, dirty, poorly behaved dogs. And I feel like the globalists have sort of killed Champ.
Well, Baseball Crank has been killing it. And he's Kiki. I mean, Champ he's died once, but he's been killed again by the Baseball Crank in the following tweet. So Dan McLaughlin, the Baseball Crank, tweeted over the weekend, Champ Biden dies, Major lives on. The Biden family tragedy in miniature. And to which he received a tidal wave of outraged replies.
Oh my God!
Including from just right after I'm looking at Tommy Vitor and John Favreau, who replied to Baseball Crank, "You are a truly awful person." And then Favreau says, "Imagine how utterly broken you must be to proudly display that level of public cruelty to other human beings."
Obama made jokes about drone striking teenagers. That, you probably wrote.
Favreau probably wrote those fucking jokes for the Correspondence Center.
The Jonas Brothers are here. They're out there somewhere. Sasha and Malia are huge fans, but boys don't get any ideas. I have 2 words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming.
Yeah, no, it's like, give me a fucking break here. I mean, like, I'm sorry, Joe Biden's president, and the dog dying isn't a national tragedy. And also, like, when you run for president and, like, your chief point of appeal to the public is that your son died a long time ago and you feel like fucking sad about it. Like, I mean, that was a major part of Joe Biden's fucking.
He said that's why we can't have universal health care.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't even think that. I feel like the consolation prize you get for, like, that word we all love, no accountability, for these people, for Joe Biden, the guy who supported the Iraq War, the guy who, was behind every major piece of financial deregulation, blah, blah, blah. We could go on forever. You guys all know everything he's done. The consolation for people like that sticking around their entire and our entire fucking lives and just sometimes doing the bare minimum is that you get to make fun of them in their lives. Like, I don't respect this guy, like, as a person. And in fact, like, his main utility to me is that he's just falling apart. Is the wheels are falling off of him, and like his life is kind of funny. And it's like, you take that away, what do we have?
And it's weird. Like, I mean, obviously, it's not. I don't think it's entirely the same people doing it, but it is funny to contrast the blue check media reactions to the Slate story about losing Luna, where they were all like, "So brave of you to share this story. Thank you so much for sharing. This is." It's a hard choice, but you made the right one. We'll all stand with you. And then Baseball Crank, our boy Crank, tweets a joke about a dead dog. And these people, they lose their minds. They can't handle it. They're like, I can't imagine doing a human being doing something so profoundly cruel to someone else. It's just like, look, it was a good joke, okay? It was a good joke. And this is coming on the heels of a week where, like, there are fucking, like, copious leaked emails and text messages from Hunter where he's calling his lawyer the N-word and arranging trysts with escorts with his cousin, who's, like, his female cousin. He's asking for dates and with the caveat, no yellows, please. And then he said that amazing line about, like, I need someone who's very attuned to evil and against it.
No, that's what the cousin said. Yeah,
that's what the cousin said?
These are all these women are like me. They're aware. They're distrustful and very wary of evil.
I love it. I love it when Irish
these people are human 8-balls. They're made entirely of cocaine. Like, dude, we are both equally attuned to evil. And we are very, very wary of it.
But I love it when like two Irish American relatives talk to each other, and it's just like, it's like watching a great duet of lies.
I mean, like, the text exchanges with his cousin were weird, because it seemed like he was trying to set him up with dates with her friends, but it could have been also, I don't know, something a little bit more nefarious.
Absolutely.
Going on there.
It looked like he was ordering off of the pizza menu, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Some guys like to buy their wives,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but, like, are you telling me that if you couldn't get, if you had a machine that the Pentagon had built that would allow, like, some sort of temporal, like, quantum rifle that allowed you to shoot Hunter in the head and it would, like, pull from another dimension a still living Beau Biden, that they wouldn't do that?
They would do that in a fucking heartbeat. I mean, like, I'm sorry, if you can't see the well, hey, like, there's the parallel in that, like, someone else pointed this out, but there's the parallel in that Joe Biden gave both of his sons dog names.
Yes.
I wish
Hunter
I remember who said that.
Hunter and Beau. That's such a good point. And then, like, Champ and Major. I mean, like, Hunter is the one who, like, he keeps biting people. He can't stop biting people. He keeps going to biting rehab, but he just won't stop acting up. He won't stop being bad.
Well, Major has been doing some really good and really soulful stick piles in the backyard, helping him get over his need to bite people.
I've been taking some time to work on me and digging holes in the backyard. I've been doing a lot of that lately. It helps me center myself.
Yeah, Champ brought in a dead squirrel from the backyard, and it just sold for $750,000 at a gallery in Soho.
So, I mean, obviously, like, look, everyone's mad at the Baseball Crank.
Rip the skin off and eat the brains out the baseball. Gonna run a motherfucking train on the baseball.
And I was just like, look, fair is fair. A funny tweet is a funny tweet. However, Baseball Crank, I mean, obviously not being one to enjoy humor and also obviously someone who always needs to have the last word, has gone and shot himself in the foot by writing a piece for the National Review in which he attempts to explain this tweet away in a way that it like makes it like seem like he wasn't joking. So, I mean, I wanted to give this week's Amazon gift card to the Baseball Crank, but no, he had to go and explain the joke rather than just letting it stand on its own 2 feet. So I'm going to read now here from the Book of Crank. This is Baseball Crank writing in the National Review, the Shakespearean father-son tragedy of the Biden family. And, like, obviously this is not exactly new territory for the Baseball Crank or anyone to plumb. This is very old hat at this point. But I just love the way the Crank attempts to defend his rather funny observation from the slings and arrows of the Pod Save Johns. So he writes here, It was announced Saturday that Joe Biden's dog, Champ, has died at the age of 13. By all accounts, the family German Shepherd was, as we would say, a good boy. Dogs are with us too briefly, and saying goodbye to them is inevitable but never easy. That leaves the family with another German Shepherd, Major, who was kicked out of the White House for a month after reportedly biting a Secret Service agent and a National Park Service employee. On the eve of Father's Day, the contrast between the two dogs, one uncomplicatedly beloved, the other a constant source of trouble, put me in mind of the Shakespearean tragedy at the heart of the Biden family, Joe's sons, Beau and Hunter. We've seen many sides of Joe Biden over the past half-century, and there is no more sympathetic side than that of the wounded, grieving father. He goes on here, Joe was a man of boundless ambition and self-regard. Elected to the Senate in his 20s, full of quick-tongued Irish blarney, able to talk at length without tiring, convinced that he could become president in his 40s as the young voice of the baby boom generation. Blah, 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 going on and on. And he goes, he talks about Beau, and then he talks, Hunter was another story. A drug addict, a repeat peddler of influence on his dad's good name, a guy who used the N-word. It is natural for a father, busy with his career, to be indulgent of sons who have lost the rest of the family as toddlers. It's not hard to picture Joe, seeing that the family was in good hands with Beau, being all the more indulgent of Hunter. Or maybe that's all armchair hogwash. We all have known wise and uptight parents who did everything right, and one or more of their kids just got away from them. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you just gotta put them down.
Do you think that's like Crank's situation? Like he has one son who also like Crank does. Every picture of him looks like it's a colorized daguerreotype of someone from before World War I. Where he's just like that uncanny looking, and he's like some type of like bullshit conservative lawyer. But then he has one son who like got an earring, and he doesn't speak to him. He has an evil. There's an evil Crank.
Yeah, he doesn't even like baseball.
Yeah, he hates baseball. He likes footy, and he has an earring.
So he goes on here, says, then the tragedy. The firstborn son died. Beau got a brain tumor, and as with the brain tumor that took my mother 19 years ago, there was no good news along the way. He died in the spring of 2015. Burying a child is brutal. Doing it twice is worse. My dad buried two sons, much like Biden, one of them in 1972, one in 2010. The second one broke him. My dad was in a home by the time he was the age Joe is now. Ooh, so like baseball Crank's like really turning it around. He's like, oh, you don't think I can joke about family tragedy? Well, let me one-up you.
He just standpoint theoried your ass.
Yeah, baseball Crank is doing my favorite thing that people do when they argue online, where they're like, oh yeah, you think my life's easy? Well, my grandparents died. And they're like 38. You're like 75. Of course your parents are dead. I, the baseball Crank, am an orphan now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, his brothers also died, so he's got that going for him. He's got a little extra.
It's true. I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like, I think it's sort of lame to moralize against the baseball Crank, but I just don't get it. It's like he had that article where he's bragging about his dad writing the letter to Reagan about apartheid.
Oh, baseball Crank?
Yeah, do you remember that?
No, what was that again?
Remember he's like, my dad wrote a letter. My dad was a New York City cop who wrote a letter to Reagan about the situation in South Africa.
The veto sanctions or whatever.
No, it's like it's evident why he's like a bad guy, or at least like believes bad things. But I don't know. I don't know what I think this thing where people like Matt, you pointed it out how it's like equally lame to when people would get offended on behalf of the Trumps. Like, who fucking
honestly,
cares?
it's like, come on. Like, remember when they were saying that Barron might have seen the picture of Kathy Griffith holding Trump's fake severed head, and that was It's like, do you like having to deal with that sanctimonious bullshit? And the answer is, I only don't like being on the other end of it. I love doing this. This is their favorite thing to do, to pretend to be morally superior to their opponents. That's their favorite thing. That they get frustrated when Republicans do it because they think that they're cheating, because they think they're not being honest, because they know in their heart that they love doing that stuff and they're being disingenuous. But they want to be doing this. They love it. Well, they love it way more than doing jokes about someone. That's kind of uncomfortable. Getting to get offended about jokes, that's their fucking comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's what they love doing.
This would be such a better country if there was just like an agreement that all these people are like disgusting. And if we don't get any...
I'm telling you.
The Eric Adams. Eric Adams Nation.
It's just sort of like, I feel like if you reach a certain level of power, like it's okay to make fun of the intensely personal terms, even dealing with family tragedy, because it's just like, look, he's president of the United States.
You fucking mounted a a spiral staircase made of human skulls to get where you are. Like you have broken free of humanity in most respects. You've turned into a reptile. Like you treat the rest of humanity with an Olympian cannibalistic disdain. Why the hell can't we do that too? Come on.
I also think it's funny though that Crank has to like put this in terms of like a Shakespearean tragedy and just be like, actually, I'm being quite sympathetic to the Biden family because I too acknowledge that it's hard to lose a child, to have a child die. It's like, hey, I'm not made of stone here, people. Also, yeah, you're right. I do remember that Baseball Crank's dad was like a fucking hard-nosed New York City cop in the Bronx in the 60s and 70s. He was like the Dudley Smith of the East Coast.
Yeah, Michael Corleone shot his dad in the head in an Italian restaurant.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say like his dad was really broken up when he had to shoot his friend Frank Serpico for talking out of school. No, but yeah, like so he goes on to compare the Biden family to the Kennedys. And talk about how, the Kennedys had two good sons that had to be put down, and then they ended up with Ted, who was, the fat kid in the family. Right here, Ted, the fat kid in the family that valued looks and vigor, the one who almost got kicked out of Harvard for cheating, the one who destroyed his own White House hopes when he killed a girl and covered it up. Even that did not mend his boozy, womanizing ways for decades. Well, so he's still got to get a ding in on the Kennedy family while he's going at the Bidens.
I mean, you can criticize Ted Kennedy, but he was the inspiration for the film Tommy Boy.
So he goes here. Crank just goes on to write, with no good son to inherit the Biden legacy, the black sheep of the family assumed unexpected prominence that nobody had planned or wanted. Joe, unable to step back and bask in the glow of Beau's rise the way George H.W. Bush did after 1992, decided to run again himself in 2020, visibly well past his prime. Hunter embarrassed him at every possible turn, but Joe would never turn on the only remaining son, the last remnant of the family he brought with him in 1972, no matter what ethical compromises it demanded, no matter how many people warned him about what Hunter was doing. We can blame Joe Biden for all the risks he is willing to run and the things he is willing to overlook in order to let his son and brother Jim cash in with shady foreigners, and for an approach to nepotism that makes a mockery of Democratic crocodile tears about the Trumps. But that is all political fair game, and it always is. We can't blame Joe Biden for having an unshakable devotion to his last remaining son, or for the independent misbehavior of a kid who is now 51 years old. He's Baseball Crank kind of spitting facts here, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, he is sort of dead on here because it's like, isn't that one of the most hilarious things about Hunter? Like, it's equally lame. The libs getting mad at Crank, it's equally lame to the fucking shithead MAGA people who are like, Hunter said the N-word. Like, you don't care. Like, how many times do you think Donald Trump said it? Like, what the fuck? But the funny thing is that Hunter is a 51-year-old man who is saving memes about his dad saying the N-word.
Yep.
That's hysterical.
And sending it to his lawyer.
Yeah. To his fucking his poor fucking lawyer, just sick of the shit. And that was always the thing where I thought that Biden he's the true king of whites. Like, there are so many Bidens in this country and very few Trumps. Biden, kissing his 52-year-old son on the lips for way too long and being like, you're my most handsome little guy. That's what, there are a lot of people who do that in this country, and that's really the funny thing about them. One of the many funny things about them.
Crank finishes out by writing, the tragedy of Joe Biden in the years when he ought to be enjoying his retirement is that being a dad means the family doesn't always work out the way you planned it. Sometimes you can't retire when you wanted to, and the things you would do for your kids sometimes go beyond the things you might ever have done just for yourself.
Joe Biden would have done all of this for himself, and also
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe's having the time of his life.
He is so happy.
Did you see him? He was him at the G7 was it's like when you bring a dog to the dog park. It was great for him. St. Patrick's Day.
God, St. Patrick's
He's
Day.
been dreaming about doing this stupid bullshit forever. He loves it. This is the happiest he's ever been.
Well, I mean, just it's been too long since we've talked about Crank. I mean, he was such an important part about the early rise of Chapo, and I'd like to see more of his little baseball face everywhere.
I miss him. I do miss him a lot. I guess I don't know. I guess we have two sons. We have two sons that we brought with us when we first came here. Unlike the Bidens, we have Crank and we have Rod. But we don't. A lot of the other people we don't.
Let's not forget Caleb Jacoby, our other unofficial son.
When was the last time we read a Jeff Jacoby?
Yeah, no, I mean Caleb cleaned up his ways. He's a DJ now.
Yeah,
he's not running away from
awesome.
home anymore. Yeah, but yeah, no, Rod and baseball Crank. I mean, just two giants, and I mean, Crank is a hilarious dork in so many ways, but I mean, more nerdy, all the fucking people getting angry at him for being like, oh God, how could you make fun of Joe Biden's dog and his dead son or whatever? It's just like, okay. I mean, maybe if Joe Biden never ever talked about Bo because he was like, that grief is private, but no, he shares it every chance he gets.
No, yeah, I mean,
and I mean, I'm not shitting on him for that either. People process grief in different ways, and he's a blubbery Irish guy who doesn't drink, so it's got to come out somewhere.
No one who's elected is really like, you should never really see them as a human being, really.
Yeah,
there are very few Jeremy Corbyns out there who are genuinely beautiful, beautiful people. But for the most part, whether it's Joe, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's, fucking Chris Coons or whoever, that's not
Eric Adams.
None of them are real people. None of these people make the decisions or see the world the same way that even a normal weird person that you would know does. They're freaks. They're
and one of the ways to know that is that if you've ever seen a picture of a politician that they post on Twitter to show them watching a sporting event, and this is true across the Anglosphere, you see someone on a bar stool 3 feet away from a fucking portable television. These people do not sit and relax and enjoy things like sporting events the way that you and I do. They don't relate to their time on Earth the same way.
Yeah, do you remember those disgusting pictures that Scott Walker would be post where he's like,
his horrifying ham meals.
Well, he'd be like watching the Brewers with my sons, and he's just standing straight up like this. He looks like he has a coat hanger in his polo shirt, and he's eating like a perfectly room temperature brat and a hot beer with his shitty kids.
Matt, another standard watching tactic for Western politicians is it'll be like, instead of the tiny portable television that they're staring into, it's like a big sort of a den, sort of TV style furnished basement room, and it's like an 80-inch television, but they're standing right in front of it, bolt upright, hands in their pockets.
Yeah, they love standing in front of large televisions too.
They're just they're so close that all they're seeing is just pixels move around.
And if they do sit, it's never in a chair that anyone would sit in to watch an entire sporting event.
That's why America rejected Mitt Romney, was because he was openly that. The last guy since HW who is openly that thing, where it's like, yeah, my favorite game is this thing where we torture a horse and make it dance.
Remember when he said his favorite food was hot dog?
Yeah.
His favorite
He said my favorite meat was
my
hot
favorite
dog.
meat is hot dog.
Yeah.
And my second favorite meat is hamburger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he also referred to sport as he referred to sports as sport.
That was that the same interview where he's like, I like jokes and things of a humorous nature. It was awesome. Yeah, I wish I could vote for him.
So moving on from the baseball Crank, I'd like to go into this week's official reading series, which is it's a rare one because it's a tweet thread that I thought was so wonderful that I think for a lot of reasons it warrants including in a reading series canon. But going back to the beginning, Felix mentioned that this is a certain style of kind of weepy white European conservative version of buck breaking. But the main thread of this tweet thread I'm going to get into is being gay with your homies.
Yeah.
Or rather not, it's not, let me correct myself. It is not about being gay with your homies. It is about being perceived as being gay with your homies, when in actuality, what you were doing is cultivating a sense of intimate male partnership and friendship that, because of the acceptance of homosexuality, is now coded as being gay. Whereas it used to be you could just like oil wrestle with your friends and love them and write, letters and poetry to your best friend all the time.
Die in each other's arms fighting the Macedonians.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, just get gassed together in a trench in World War One. Okay, so this is a thread by Peg. This is a Peg O'Brien. Peg. We'll just call him Peg. This guy's been around for a while. He lives in France. And like I said, he's a species of conservative that I wish we had more of in America, which is these sort of like these restorationist kind of pro-monarchy types that have been crying ever since the French Revolution, but they've like never toughened up. And in that way, they remind me a lot of the left. It's because like the left in America is because they stay losing all the time, and because of that, they haven't gotten smarter or tougher. They've just gotten like weepier and weepier.
Yeah, I do have to say, when I was reading this thread, it was like, you look at the guy's bio, you look at everywhere he writes, it's like, why can't that be Tariq Nasheed? He's doing this, but better. He's better at it.
So, I mean, you said at the beginning of the show, and I wasn't planning to, I wasn't planning on your impromptu review of Tariq Nasheed's buck breaking, but you're right. This whole thread is like the white guy version of buck breaking.
Yeah,
it's like
and
the
it's
exact
shittier.
same thing that, it's shittier, but it's like the exact same thing that animates the buck breaking narrative. So let's go into Peg here. So the thing that kicked off this mega tweet thread is the New Yorker had some post about it just says here, the skeletons of 254 warriors from the fearsome sacred band of Thebes were discovered in a mass grave in Cheronia. A number were buried with arms linked. If you look closely, you can see that some were holding hands. Now, for fans of antiquity and classical Greek history, the sacred band of Thebes were pretty much, this was written about by contemporary historians as being, this is the whole sleight of hand he's doing in this thread, because I guess, they weren't gay in the sense that, modern gay people consider themselves gay, but they loved fucking each other. Well, they loved fucking men, exclusively.
Your average, ancient warrior of antiquity, elite forces, they were exactly like Jacques from Seeking Derangements.
Well, Felix, you had a really good point that, in the past, before this wretched modern era that we all live in, if you were a gay guy, the gayest thing you could do was join the military of any country. If you were 100% just a pussy destroyer, you could go into theater. You'd become an actor.
No, yeah, that's the thing. Is who is one of the greatest military leaders of all time? Frederick the Great.
Frederick the Great, baby.
Frederick the Great was gayer than any modern man. He was. If he saw a woman, he would be like, "Oh, fucking gross! Get that fucking shit out of here! Fuck you! I'm gonna look at that fucking gash. Get her out of here. Ugh, I'm gonna fucking throw up. Get me some dudes." Very tough guy, brilliant commander, but that was more the norm for great military commanders. And not even you go even to World War II. Was it Eisenhower who was I think I'm gonna leave my wife and I'm gonna marry a French
He tried to in the middle of the war. He sent his fucking resignation to Marshall and said, "I'm in love with my Jeep driver, and I'm getting divorced, and I'm gonna resign." And he just said, "It's fucking World War II, Ike.
Can you get it together?" It's not even gay. Sometimes, even if they're not gay, Queenie. Patton,
MacArthur, for God's sake,
MacArthur, Patton, all of his outfits that he designed for himself. Patton wanted to have a custom-made tank commander outfit that he designed himself with pinstripes.
Homosocial relationships created the theatrical aesthetic that then was legitimized into being an open gay identity. The thing that he thinks is awful.
But that was before it was really an option. It's you'd go into the military and you'd go in front of all these fucking poor conscripts who can't read in front of you and be like, "Places, everybody, come on!" And it's a mean theater guy, and you were still tough. But if you were I just like pussy, it's I'm gonna put on a wig and become Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yeah. Did you say Dilbert and Sullivan?
No, I said Gilbert.
I would watch that. Not really interested in Gilbert and Sullivan, but I would see a Dilbert and Sullivan comic opera for sure.
There is an amazing thing in buck breaking where one of the experts is he is talking about this. He is way better grasp on history than Peg, and he's like, yeah, there were like gay soldiers in Greek antiquity, but then he like fucks up and he's like, and they would actually tie them together at the ankle if they loved each other. And then he goes,
I think he's confusing the story of Achilles and Patroclus with.
He does that, and then he goes, and that's where the phrase "tied together at the ankle" comes from, and it's like, no, it's joined
That's not
at
a
the
phrase.
hip.
I've never heard that phrase in my life.
One time.
But it's,
0 times have I heard that.
But I mean, the thing he starts with is right, that a lot of these guys were.
Well, what he's
Well, I mean, like,
Peg's
well,
whole
the
deal is-
thing that they're stumbling over is that, like, you know, homosexuality or just like the act itself of
Right.
male on
It was
male
not an
intercourse has
it
been
wasn't
a very,
like a
very
social
standard
identity the way
feature
it is now.
of almost all of human civilization and in every human civilization. It's just like, well, what Peg is complaining about is, and like a lot of these guys, like Rod Dreher too, like I'm taking like the civic brand of conservative that is really obsessed with, being afraid of gay culture and now trans issues is like, they really want to go back to an older way of being gay before gay identity was a thing that could be acknowledged. Yeah. They thought it's a better, superior way to be gay than the modern version, and I think that's what troubles them the most.
Because it doesn't mean being gay. It doesn't involve
exactly.
the alienation from like a culture that you have some sort of fixation on. Like for guys like Rod and Peg, they're looking at gay sex across like longingly across this cultural divide, but they can't cross it because doing gay sex now means being gay.
Yeah. It's like
and that alienates them from a sense of themselves that they find very, very crucial. And they resent that's been taken from them. And the thing is, they're right. That is a thing that we don't have anymore.
Yeah, like you can't be like a normal square John type with a wife and kids who nonetheless is primarily romantically interested and sexually interested in liaisons with members of the same sex. Like that doesn't mean you're a gay guy. You're a straight guy who happens to have sex with men.
That does suck.
I mean, that should be an option.
You have that kind of conflict within you, that sucks. And I can see why you might get pissed, especially if you really hold on to like notions of traditional society. You feel like those give you a sense of meaning, and like old religious notions give you a sense of identity. You don't want to trade them for the furtive pleasures of gay sex.
Liberation.
But man, wouldn't it be nice if you could? And whose fault is it? It's this culture that he is totally otherwise hates. So why wouldn't he want to blame that?
Do you think like Peg or Rod would have the ability to be like a Frederick the Great?
Because they are fully modern people. Their fixation on that old way is fake. It's synthetic. It is itself a costume. Yeah, no, the thing they want they couldn't handle either, because they are like us, like we all are, modern creatures. We are creatures of the world that we live in, and their whole project is doomed because it imagines that they can turn back into different people regressively, and you can't. The only way out is through.
Yeah. So Peg has a lot of thoughts on this, and like he kicks off this thread by saying, on top of being a stupid lie, the retconning of ancient male friendship as homosexuality has damaging implications today. So right off the bat, he's claiming that the sacred band at Thebes were just good friends with each other.
That is the fundamental, and like I guess in later posts he backs away from it a little bit because he gets into that distinction between gay acts and gay identity. But that first post really does seem to be denying the well-established historic fact.
Look at Eddie Grecian Urn.
Each other. They've got buried in a giant daisy chain, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Most Grecian urns, if you go to like the Met or any like established collection of the art of antiquity, half of them just have shit that looks like Palma's Twitter feed. All right, so getting into the thread, Peg continues. He says, it seems harder and harder to deny that the normalization of homosexuality has killed intimate male friendships. I like Bronze Age Mantis's spin on this. Okay, if he's name checking Bronze Age Mantis.
Okay, first they're perverted in the Bronze Age. Now they're turning into fucking insects.
I enjoy the Bronze Age Mantis spin on this, that the powers that be made strong male bonding impossible because it's too politically dangerous. Small bands of men bound together in do-or-die friendships can destroy a regime. I mean, I think Chapo Trap House is a good Chapo Trap House and the 9/11 hijackers are like good examples of this phenomenon.
Yeah.
So I also agree with Bronze Age Mantis on this point. The homies having fun, dudes having fun is dangerous and it seems increasingly taboo in our society.
If you have-
And you have to ask her, cui bono, who benefits?
If you're three men, it's like one of you is an Eisenhower, one of you is a Patton, and one of you is a Marshall. There has to
You,
be
you
one.
decide which.
Yeah, one guy has to be like, all right, get it together, guys.
He goes, okay, so he's getting some attention here, and he goes, oh, okay, this thread has gotten lots of attention, so, haha, you have no friends, funny, inventive. Erastus, Euronymous relationships in ancient Greece were not at all the same thing we are told today is gay identity. And yes, I believe the normalization of homosexuality has had a chilling effect on certain forms of male bonding. Many other things have played into the current situation, from Anglo-Puritanism to the erosion of male-only spaces, but that too. The very fact that past male friendships, like Montaigne and La Botte, today read as gay to some people is evidence of this. Have a nice day. God damn it, I will die on this hill. So he's going to die on this hill, and he goes further to it. But I mean,
with his bros.
but like I don't know. I mean, like this takes on the flavor of another species of argument where people are just complaining about that no one has friends anymore, but they're only talking about themselves.
I mean, the main problem here is that his argument stems on the idea that the dastardly elites normalized homosexuality so that straight dudes would be too insecure to be friends with one another. Because the whole argument is premised not on there any direct attempt to interfere with male friendships. It's, well, the males themselves, the straight males themselves, are going to be so afraid of appearing gay that they won't be able to be intimate with one another.
I mean, isn't the opposite true, though? Because, I mean, like, I mean, just from a casual observation, wouldn't it seem that, like, the normalization of homosexuality, to use Peg's phrase, has led to it being much more okay to, like, express emotion and be vulnerable as a man who's heterosexual, or to display affection
no, but only
for
no.
other
But
men?
the thing is, I think what he means is that you have to acknowledge it. Like, you have to do a no homo thing. You have to make a joke of it, which means you can't be truly intimate in your relationships. You have to keep all male relationships ironized to prevent against the encroaching anxiety about being gay. And like what he's complaining about is it's not some dastardly fucking mechanism of power. It's the fact that all fucking friendships are less potent than they used to be. All human connection is less potent than it used to be. All of our relationships are thinner and more tenuous than they used to be because our relationships have been dissolved in the fucking acid vat of capitalism to the point where we cannot believe in anything beyond ourselves, where we cannot operate in the world without having an entirely self-focused motivation, because otherwise we will be ground into fucking paste. We've all been turned into the homo economicus that libertarian psychos said we always were, and that means we literally cannot afford to have relationships that obligate us beyond our self-interest. And we all know that. And that means our relationships are thinner. It has nothing to do with the type, and it certainly doesn't have anything to do with liberalization of sexual mores. It has to do with the fact that no one can sacrifice realistically.
Yeah.
And also that emotion has been totally coded female in the modern era.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's if your goal was to, dissolve male friendships or make them thinner and weaker.
Ironic.
Yeah. The most roundabout way you could do that is by gay sex, I guess. But the easier way you can do that, if you control capital and control everything, make it so that the line between work and not work is blurred. Make it so that none of your moments are really for you, but you're told to really only think about yourself, to really only focus on yourself, your success, your personal feelings as your personal feelings is the only true thing in the world. That seems like it would work better for dissolving male friendships and everyone's friendships, and it has. Like, I don't disagree with the idea that, like, there are fewer friendships and people are lonelier than they have been in a while. I completely agree with that. But we were talking about this when there's a conservative thing where it's like they point out a problem or they point out a they point out like a historical facet where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's true. And then it's like, and it's because of people are afraid that people will think they're gay. And it's like, well, okay, well, what the fuck? Are we talking about the same thing here?
I mean, the thing is like, okay, people will think you're gay. The whole point now that's okay, right? So the thing stopping you is an internal insecurity.
Yeah, this it's a perfect example of, I mean, really doing a very modern thing of taking a broad social problem like loneliness and lack of friends and then putting your own extremely fucked up, weird personal thing on it where it's like, well, my reason and therefore everyone's reason is that if I have a male friend, people will think we're gay.
Yep.
I'm just imagining like Herman Melville's letters to Hawthorne, where he's pouring his heart out, and at the end of it, he just signs postscript, no homo.
Yeah.
So Peg continues here. He goes, the point isn't that no Greeks didn't engage in homosexual conduct, duh, but to say of some Greeks they were lovers and leave it as that implying that they had a gay identity in our sense is simply either ignorant or a lie, and all good scholarship backs this view. It's like I said, it all becomes this thing about gay identity, and it's just like, yeah, like nobody thought of themselves as like, no one thought of themselves in like Foucault made this point in his History of Sexuality, like nobody thought of themselves as having a sex life until the modern era, until time had been segmented by production so that areas of your life became discrete things that formed an identity, right? So, like, if you had gay sex, of which plenty of people were doing throughout all of history, it didn't necessarily make you gay. It was just a thing you did, even if it was, like, kept quiet or whatever. But, like, I mean, so he's like, it's like, for him, it's not about the sex act itself. It's not about homosexuality, but it's about it's about those sex acts forming an identity that is then a political category that is then a group that needs to be advocated on behalf of, or that certain disparities in law and society need to be redressed on behalf of that group. But like it's really, I mean, but with all these guys, it really is just about sodomy. I mean, like that's really what they're thinking about. Or I mean, like what is more like what's more threatening here? Is it the act of sodomy, or is it what he calls the social acceptance of it?
Well, I'd presume it's probably like his argument is the social acceptance.
Yeah, it's the social acceptance. That's what gives it that's what gives the social breathing room to acculturate like a public persona that can be associated, or a public set of behaviors and attitudes that can be associated with the act.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is so insane, though, because it's like, okay, if your argument is like this problem exists because of like acceptance of homosexuality as its own concept, and gayness as like a lifestyle or an identity, rather. Okay, that toothpaste isn't really going back in the tube.
Right.
What is your plan to like get people to forget that gayness is an option? Like, what are you going to do?
None of these sort of like integralists or whatever you want to call them, monarchists or what are these return to tradition types? I mean, none of them are like ever very explicit about how they would get that toothpaste back in the tube, because they know if they stated it outright, I mean, like most people would regard it as, thoroughly monstrous.
I honestly think that their plan is they finger crossed that they survive the apocalypse, and then them and their buddies can all like do a fucking Society of Creative Anachronism rewriting of the earth. Like, oh, good. Like we could take this the bricks out of this Walmart and turn them into a castle keep and start having tournaments.
Yeah. I mean, again, I got to favorably compare buck breaking to one of the theses to buck breaking that they say at the start of the movie is that the default state for like a lot of white people is just homosexuality, which is like an amazing thing to say. But it's like, again, it's way more interesting than this.
Yeah.
Awesome movie.
I mean, like, would Peg agree with that statement or not?
No, he wouldn't, because he'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But he's saying this kind of very intimate, flowery, pseudo-erotic connection between men of the past is superior to that of today, but that's not gay.
Right. Well,
so
yeah,
like,
that's the argument. Like with buck breaking, the argument is like, no, that's gay. Like even if they had no concept of gayness back then, they're still gay as I see them today. Whereas Peg is going, no, it's not gay. They didn't invent that until like 1951.
Okay, I mean, he's going on here. He says, on the link between normalization of homosexuality and the decay of male friendships, perhaps the best way to go about this is through pop culture, since it's both a mirror to its society and a muse. John Woo's A Better Tomorrow, the dramatic knot of the story is the conflicts between friendship, family, loyalty, and honor. To establish the friendship of the two main characters, the opening scene shows them engaging in horseplay, wrestling, etc. At one point, Chow Yun-fat's character tries to shove a piece of food in his friend's mouth. You would never have those scenes in a Western movie today. Why? You know why. It would look gay. Asian cinema is an interesting point of comparison since it's so often concerned with those classical themes of friendship and culture, and it comes from a contemporary society where homosexuality is, or was, very taboo. Contrast Red Letter Media's review of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, where he very astutely points out that the movies need to establish that all of the male characters have a case of the not gays. The point is that subliminally but inevitably, normalization of homosexuality has added a question mark to countless male interactions. This acts as a subtle but nonetheless real break on male intimacy. That Rosetta Stone of American culture, Friends, the intense male friendship of the series is Joey and Chandler, and the show never stops getting laughed from creating an is it gay subtext. Whenever Joey and Chandler move for a hug, there's an awkward pause, followed by a laugh track, which works precisely because the show and the audience is having inevitably the same split-second is it gay moment. Every time Joey and Chandler have an intense emotional moment, they suddenly feel the need to do something manly, with the implication that intense male bonding is a little bit gay. Laugh track. It's funny that he brings up John Woo's movie because The Killer is another movie that's very homoerotic in its themes. Very homoerotic. I don't know, but the question is, from Moby Dick or Huck Finn on, it's like a major theme in like American literature, or like even not American literature, is like the eroticized friendships between two men. Like it's Ishmael and Queequeg, or Huck and Jim, and it's like much ink has been written about this. But the question is, like, for Peg, is he saying that like those authors, like Herman Melville, for instance, was unaware of the subtext here, or that this was an accident, or it's only read as gay through a modern lens? No, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, that's moronic. I mean, like, the literary trope for, like, maybe hundreds of years was, like, the idea that this is sort of tragic because it's not even an option. Like, that to fully consummate this and to fully, like, for these two men to, like, live their life as romantic partners, it's not even that it's forbidden. It's, like, you can't even do that. That's not available in any sense.
Well, I don't know what Peg's deal is, but like I read this into a lot of Rod's work on the subject as well. Is it like, now that we live in a modern era in which being gay is an identity, and you can be gay and form a family and be a openly gay and fully integrated member of our society, and indeed a very successful one. It's like that option being available, whereas in the past it wasn't. I mean, I think there's a certain sense of like a loss of like the frisson created by the taboo of it, but also a sense of the loss of like I've wasted my life. Because, like, if I could have just been doing this all along, maybe you would have.
Well, yeah. I mean, the character Javert. I mean, not literally the same thing, but, why do I think Javert kills himself at the end of his storyline in Les Miserables? I don't think he kills himself because he's like, oh, I broke my moral code, time to kill myself. He kills himself because he realizes he can break his code, and that that way he can adhere to a grander sense of morality. And then he goes, oh, my God, I wasted my life. How many years did I devote to this code? I could have done this 40 years ago, and I wouldn't have wasted my life. I would have lived my life as an actual moral guy. Okay, I have to kill myself.
Must I now begin to doubt who never doubted all these years? My heart is stone, and still it trembles. The world I have known is lost in shadow.
I mean, how many people do you know that like live a life they don't really like, but won't deviate from it because that fear of trying it a different way, whether they're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, that the moment it works, which on some level they know it will, they'll go, oh my God, I wasted my entire fucking life. Yeah. That's the fear that keeps a lot of people where they are.
And, the other interesting thread to this Peg thread is that he's writing from a sort of European sensibility. And what he's talking about, like this kind of this smirking, winking sense about, oh, like you can't be too emotional as a man or be too physical with the male friend, or else you have this kind of this no homo moment. And like he's hearkening back to like, Yeah, I mean, he goes on to talk about Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings, or British guys who were writing sonnets to each other before they got ripped apart by Turkish machine guns at Gallipoli or whatever. But the thing is, like, that old sense of masculinity that he's hearkening back to, of this intense man love, this platonic male love and dedication to one another, and really like deep sense of intimacy, has never really like taken root in America as like a frontier culture. Like, America's codes of masculinity are very different than European ones, I feel. So like,
you don't make out when you meet somebody, for example.
yeah.
That is a funny thing he has something in the thread where he's like, this guy he knows like is doing some deal with like Aramco, I think, Saudi Aramco, and a European lawyer comes in and like kisses him, and he's like, you can only do that in Europe. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And I think the difference comes down to the fact that we're the frontier country. We're the country of individuals and isolated stoic killers, like Lawrence called us. And that means that intimacy has always been less in America. And that now, and then because of that, capitalism became enthroned and headquartered there, and then made things even less fucking communal and less intimate and more individualistic.
And particularly for like male displays of vulnerability or emotion have always been more circumspect in American culture. Because you had to be like you had to be the strong silent type, out on the frontier or whatever. He goes on, he writes here, I used to blame Anglo-Protestant Puritanism, and I still do, but obviously normalization of homosexuality plays a role. A lot of things that used to be natural between men are less so. Maybe you think this is just because people need to become even more accepting of homosexuality. One wonders how that could even be possible. Maybe it doesn't affect you. Good for you. You're very special. But don't gaslight me that this isn't real. And then he goes like 3D. Lord of the Rings. If you know anything about Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, you know that Frodo and Sam. I just love like that tweet right there is like a perfect tweet for me, because it's just. I don't know. Maybe because I am affected by today's sort of ironic distancing between masculinity and feelings or whatever. I mean, to me, it's funny that he's lamenting the normalization of homosexuality, but he's an adult man talking about "don't gaslight me."
Yeah, an adult, don't gaslight me. Here's what happens to my
and
favorite
happens in Lord of the
historical
Rings.
figures, Frodo and Sam. I mean, like, as we're reading through this babble, the thing I think about is like all the close male friendships that I know that I see. And you know what? Make no mistake, a lot of them are between people who, if not necessarily rich, do get to escape a lot of the rattiness and collapsed and flattened existence that most people with who are totally reliant on office jobs or manual labor or service jobs are subject to. It's people who like are able to have a supplemental or primary income from like an internet entertainment thing. And I don't think there's a total across the board correlation, but it is noticeable that people who aren't as subject to the flattening effects of our current reality are able to have these very deep male friendships. But of course, also Frodo and Sam aren't gay.
Share the load.
And also, it's just like, this is only really a problem to the extent to, like, okay, so homosexuality has been normalized in our culture. I mean, what his prescription is for turning the clock back on that, who fucking knows? But now that that's the case, and that, like you said, if you're a straight man and you're being affectionate with another man, there's always this tension of, like, publicly of, like, oh, will someone think I'm gay or not? Well, I mean, like, that's a YP. It's only a problem to the extent that you let it into your head to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. I mean, you can, like, write sonnets to your homies, wrestle with them, sacrifice for them, love them. I mean, if someone snickers at it and you feel like your back is up against the wall, well, I mean, like, that's your problem. Maybe you're not as close. Maybe you're not as close to friends as you fucking thought you were.
I think
if some anonymous snicker is all it takes you to just be like, I'm not being gay.
What he's saying is that the effect of this scheme by the elites is to, over time, disincentivize it among all men. So yeah, this is essentially your fault, but hey, most guys are going to feel that way, and so guys are going to tend to be less intimate with one another, even though it is just in their own head. It is still, it is part of this this evil strategy of like demobilizing masculinity away from what specifically he doesn't say. All he says is homies are a threat to power. How and why, like what that means, he has no. That's the extent to which he sets up this entire theory that, well, if guys were more friendly with each other, they would maybe overthrow the government. Like, well, how exactly that's supposed to happen? And like defining that as like the load bearing element of any kind of revolutionary movement it's all just picking through like the whole broken pottery of history just to find the one thing to justify your weird hang up.
Yeah, I mean, like, I do think, like, very generally, like, genuine friendships and genuine connection are, like, sometimes they can be of great use to any political movement or social movement. I think they're just important as a facet of life. But also, I mean, guys during the British Empire wrote fucking poems to each other. They didn't really destroy any of the great evil of the empire.
No, that was good, though. The British Empire was good.
That's good.
Even though it was the British Empire and the capitalist system that they unleashed that gave us all of this.
Yeah.
Like the system that, and these guys who want to go back to before that, yeah, your only chance of doing that is building a medieval times on the wreckage, because we are not those people anymore at a fundamental level. I mean, if you want to point to like the real thing that normalized homosexuality as a lifestyle and an identity separate from the act, it was fucking advertising. It was the commercial instinct to take the desire to have gay sex and turn it into a market. And then identities formed around those markets. Like that's how all identities get formed.
And a valuable market because it reflects it reflects a group of people with a lot of disposable income. And as such, capital and power in our current society.
And so, if once again you find the culprit, and it's not your scheming Judeo-Masonic cabal, which is the European Catholic traditional explanation for what happened, but the good old fucking profit motive. So you have to pull the machine out of this thing that's pulling us away from each other and turning us more and more into just fucking demographics. But you can't turn the clock back on the identities that have been formed. We are those people now. And to repress it is to fatally alienate huge chunks of the population from any communal project, which a non-capitalist government would have to be.
Also, another thing I would really like guys like this I think they should have to explicate like a lot more clearly what exactly they think is wrong with being gay or homosexual acts themselves. Because, I mean, if you go down further in the post, he just says, well, I'm a conservative Christian, and I think that human beings are naturally ordered to certain behaviors, and unnatural behaviors makes us, sad and miserable, and, like, that's why they're prescribed by God or whatever. But, like, I mean, if these acts are so unnatural, how come they're so common in all of history and human civilization?
Yeah, seems like one of the most natural things for people to do.
Right, but once again, as a occasional, indulgence, or as a parallel structure, not as a thing that is validated by the society.
Like, getting an organ transplant is pretty unnatural too. But I mean, are you going to turn it down if you need a new kidney?
I mean, this always breaks down because that's why they always have to end up arguing about things either very they either have to make very thin metaphysical arguments, like it somehow it reduces the strength of straight relationships, or the idea that it literally spreads through recruitment, and you have to make an argument that it somehow undermines conventional relationships like straight relationships, and every argument to do that is very very. I mean,
the previous classical model, like, I mean, it didn't exactly uphold heterosexual relationships. I mean, that was the standard, but it was very clear that, like, your wife or husband was just like assigned to you, like that was your function to society.
Well, that's the other
but all of your actual like romantic and creative and like imaginative flights of fantasy and trysts, or just like creativity, come from outside the marriage and family unit.
Well, that's
the highest love that you could have for another person would be someone of your own sex, whether that was sexualized or not. Is another question. I mean, sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. But it wasn't like guys who freaking love their wife didn't exist until about 1985.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a relatively modern moment, but even more so than the fact that romantic love between men and women is a relatively recent innovation of like the early modern era, the Renaissance and stuff. The other thing these guys are fetishizing about conventional relationships, the nuclear family, is a complete product of fucking like modern capitalism. That is a absolutely modern artifact. Like those social relationships are as tied into capitalism and as tied into every godless march away from the sacred that these guys have been bemoaning since 1789 as homosexual identity. It is as much a modern a social artifact, and so they want one. They want to keep one that they have turned eternal and elevated, and they want to get rid of another because they're operating just from a sense of what they're horrified by and what they fetishize that is entirely generated by their specific array of fucking repressions and
like,
psychological like pathologies, not any clear-eyed analysis of like the state of the political economy.
I mean, like back to the point I made about like the sort of split between Europe and America as it regards masculinity. I mean, I think the other thing that's going on here is like he's bemoaning the fact that a lot of these things that were traditionally regarded as being normal and masculine are now coded in our modern context, which, let's be honest, only means in American context because, like, we create culture for the world and, like, we set the standard for everyone else, are coded now as being fruity. And I think that these guys are upset that, like, their natural setting, which is soft and a little bit theatrical, is coded as being kind of being a swish now.
Yeah.
And, like, they want to go back to a time when, like, like that was, you could... like there was no difference between being a cowboy and being a Montaigne, a poet who writes,
yeah, like the Three Musketeers were like the butchest dudes on earth, and they just wore cravats and long ringlets and scented handkerchiefs in their fucking sleeve collars.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to read like the whole thing. He goes on for a long time on this thread, as you might imagine. But he continues. He says, "Why will I die on this hill? I'm going to do something incredibly stupid and actually expose some vulnerability to the pack of hyenas on this hell site." I mean, again, it's just, this is not traditionally masculine behavior to me, but that's because like I'm in an American context and I'm in a modern context that like, men talking about the hell site and normal world and being gaslit by popular culture is like not something I stereotypically associate with heterosexual men, but perhaps in a more classical context that wouldn't be the case. So Peg continues here. He writes, ha ha ha, you have no friends, loser. Well, not only do I have friends, but not all of them are internet anons, so there. But K through 12, I was 3 years younger than everyone else in my class, so that made making friends difficult. And yes, I was bullied. But thankfully, unlike libs who act out their trauma by trying to recreate their bullying at the level of politics, I grew out of my loser nerd past in the immortal words of the great Justice Brett Kavanaugh, lifting weights, drinking beer, and hanging out. In any case, typically, in whatever year I was in, I had one friend, and so I invested in this friendship with a lot of meaning and intensity. And since I was a nerd, I was, yes, inspired by some of the great friendships of classical literature, including, yes, the Iliad. Some ancient writers speculated about the Achilles-Patroclus relationship, but Homer himself never says or implies anything that's not projected by the reader. But also the great stories of the knights of the Chansons de Guest and others. When I eventually found out that some of those scholars asserted those relationships were gay, I felt like an incredible in violation. I knew it had to be false because I knew that the way that they described those relationships described my relationships, and I knew they weren't gay. It's intrinsically debasing to suggest that someone's friendship is really based on some other motive, whatever it is. And just to be clear, I'm describing experiences that happened before puberty, so please no talk of sublimated or repressed homosexual attraction. I grew up in a household where sex was openly discussed, so I was aware of homosexuality as a concept, but it had about as much relevance to me personally as the rings of Neptune. The point is that I know what it's like to experience this kind of pure, intense male friendship, and I know that it's different from sexual or romantic interest, and I know that it is the same thing as the great classical friendships. It's just incredibly destructive for the discourse to point out at these examples and go wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, on top of ignorant and stupid, of course. Hey, look, I'm a Christian conservative. I believe that human beings are naturally ordered towards certain kinds of relationships, that engaging in homosexual conduct is intrinsically unhealthy, and that society shouldn't encourage it. Today, some people find this view not only shocking, but fundamentally unfathomable, incomprehensible. That's fine. I find the contemporary live your truth ethos of the self-creating, rootless, atomistic individual both laughably absurd and horribly crude. Anyway, the I'm not crying virulence and stupidity of the replies has confirmed for me that we need more critiques of the consequences of the normalization of homosexuality. Thank you for attending my TED Talk. So there he goes. It's just, I think he doesn't want to be called queer. I mean, I think he just doesn't want people making fun of him for his, in today's society, very gay-coded behavior.
He wants to be able to wear a cape in public. That's it.
I do.
He should have just written a thing about why can men no longer why are young men no longer dressed in velvet culottes and stockings the way they were in the Victorian era. That's all he wants.
Why aren't we dressing boys as girls until they're 8?
Yeah.
They did that all the time in Victorian society.
He wants
it wasn't
to be
gay.
able to be a little bit publicly fabulous without feeling self-conscious about it.
I think that's it. I think he wants just to be like a little bit flamboyant, and I don't mean this in a gay way. I'm not saying that he's a closet case or whatever. I just think like maybe it is a tragedy that like people have this internal censor in their head if they're heterosexual about being a little allergic to swag.
Well, like they should
being a little allergic to feelings.
They should take all the money out of the F-35 program and have a completely ceremonial branch of the military that's like the cavalry, where you can do this and like have a silk pistol holder and all that shit. Yeah. Like that would be positive. I want to go back to a real man. I have a good Eric Adams thing to close this out. What's the best concert you've ever been to? Curtis Mayfield at Wingate Concert Series. At that concert, there was a rainstorm, and the lights fell on Curtis Mayfield, and they actually paralyzed him at that concert. He died a few years ago, but it was an amazing concert before that happened. Just so unfortunate.
What? The best concert he ever saw was one that was rained out and where Curtis Mayfield was put in the
got
fucking hospital.
Paralyzed.
Where was paralyzed by falling lights?
Killed Curtis Mayfield. It's like if someone...
Well, he didn't die, but he was literally paralyzed for life after that.
That's like literally... How is the play other than that, Mrs. Lincoln? But she responds
my favorite live music experience, Great White.
Yeah.
It was the Rolling Stones set at Altamont.
Yeah.
They also asked him about Israel because he's going to be New York's mayor and how he's going to advocate for it. And he said, I visited Israel twice. I'm going back again, and I'm going to try to find a plot of land so it can be my retirement place. I love the people of Israel, the food, the culture, the dance, everything about Israel.
Okay.
And they ask him, where in Israel do you plan on retiring? And he says, in the Golan Heights.
Oh my God.
Holy shit.
Fuck.
Eric,
okay, he's going to be mayor.
Yeah, he's going to be mayor.
Don't vote for him, but he's going to win tomorrow. Sorry.
Don't vote for him, but like that's it. Like you know what? He didn't even think that before. He was like, "Oh fuck, Israel! I'm going to retire in Golan Heights."
Yeah.
I love the number one controversy that has dogged Eric Adams in this mayoral race is the fact that he lives in New Jersey, and then he's just like, "Yeah, I'm going to move to the Golan Heights.
Yeah,
I'm going to buy property there and move there.
Like he's going to be a settler. Like he's
by the way,
amazing.
I would love to see how warm embrace that Eric Adams and his family will receive among fellow Israeli settlers in the Golan Heights. They'll love him.
It'll be great. They'll be so nice to him. They'll
give him so many vegan pizza meals that he can enjoy.
Well, he's like, I mean, I don't want him to win, but it's like he's such a completely like fucked up person that it's like I kind of think he is going to win.
He's the Biden of the race in every respect.
I mean, if our national politics holds to form at a local level, I mean, Eric Adams has got this sewn up. I mean, I hate to say it.
Yeah, my favorite concert was when Curtis Mayfield got paralyzed. Before he got paralyzed, of course. Like, what a great interview. I mean, I don't like his policies, but just he has the right personality to be yelled at all the time.
Well, he does, because they asked him about how he's feeling about being up in the polls, and he said, not happy, not sad. The man with the wax wings flew just enough. Not too close to the sun, not too close to the water. Steady.
What the fuck
Wait,
are you
what?
talking about?
No, that's the opposite of what happened in that story.
At all.
I think he's imagining like he probably heard that story and then just thought, well, if I had wax wings.
Okay, oh yeah, if I was Icarus, I would have just stayed
Yeah.
at exactly the right altitude
Yeah.
so that the wax wouldn't melt.
Yep.
No. Again, like, he sucks. Pretty much everyone else running for mayor sucks.
The job is just to take the orders of the cops and real estate. What else are you supposed to do? Dunk tank.
I mean, I wish I could vote for DeBungalow for a third term.
Honestly, yes. They should do the Bloomberg thing for him. Give him another term.
Yeah, sorry,
He's
but
finally having fun after eight fucking years because he realized the thing that every New York mayor should know going in: you will never get another fucking position. You will never win another election after you're New York City mayor, and you should just accept that and then have fun with it.
look, DeBungalow beat the Trump virus. No ifs, ands, or buts. And he beat it for the entire East Coast. DeBungalow is my mayor.
There'll be statues of him soon.
Yeah. No, he's a guy who's like not really going to get appreciated, but by history.
Yes,
Yeah.
history will redeem him.
Yeah, I will be DeBungalow's
Just like Castro,
Plutarch.
it will be resolved by history.
Yeah.
Well, that does it for today's episode, guys. Ask not who the baseball cranks for; it cranks for thee.